I was never really a runner. The way I see running is a gift, especially when you have stage 4 cancer. I'm Anne. I'm running the Boston Marathon, presented by Bank of America. I run for Dana-Farber Cancer Institute to give people like me a chance to thrive in life, even with cancer.
Join Bank of America in helping Anne's cause. Give if you can at BofA.com/supportAnne. What would you like the power to do? References to charitable organizations is not an endorsement by Bank of America Corporation. Copyright 2025.
Business taxes. We're stressing about all the time and all the money you spent on your taxes.
This is my bill?
Now Business Taxes is a TurboTax small business expert who does your taxes for you and offers year-round advice at no additional cost, so you can keep more money in your business. Now this is taxes. Intuit TurboTax. Get an expert now on TurboTax.com/business. Only available with TurboTax Live Full Service.
We may live over 505,000 miles. It's been a while from Lincoln Financial Field, but what we lack in proximity, we make up for in film study. And each and every week, we'll be bringing you in-depth film breakdowns from across the pond and the Sooner State. Welcome to On the Shane page. I am your host, Shane Haff. You can follow me on Twitter at ShaneHaffNFL. And I am joined by BGN's own film guru, Jonny Page. Give him a follow on Twitter at JohnnyPage9. Jonny, I heard the word on the street is you're writing a book on parenting. When's that come out again?
Yeah, about 10 years, 10, 12 years. Yeah. I thought I was going to screw up in the intro, Shane. It's not supposed to be you. I've got plenty of excuses on my side. I got a 3-week-old. I don't know what your excuse is to get the intro wrong.
I know.
A little peek behind the curtain. We never re-record anything. Have we ever deleted or re-recorded anything? I think we could just get every single thing wrong on the podcast. We'd be like, yeah, just put it out. When you've been on Twitter for 10 years, like I have, I think, God, 11 years or so, the amount of bad takes you can just search and find is like, there's no point hiding bad takes. There's absolutely no point. But yeah, I'm good. I'm actually not as tired as I thought. This is like a treat. I mean, always the podcast is always nice, of course, Shane. It's always a thrill. But this week feels particularly nice that hopefully I get to talk without any interruptions about football. So what more can you do, really?
Yeah. I think the only thing we've ever had to do and like edit was the one film episode that we did for Patreon, where for whatever reason, it just didn't record the clips.
Yeah, that was.
And so like Jonny and I could see them, but they just didn't show up on the screen for people. And so I had to go like dump the clips, like overlay them on the video, but the audio was all the same. And so, yeah,
there was just no film. It was a great film podcast without film. We're just talking through plays that no one can see. But yeah, except for that, I'm good. I was just talking off there. Actually, I should probably save this for the mailbag about some of the stuff we're doing. If you're not on Patreon yet, we're going to do one of them straight after about sort of how it's been, because it's a weird time to have a kid because draft season is flying. So I've watched more film probably than ever, but have no idea how to actually put it all together. So this will be interesting because I'm talking running backs today with the running back guru. Am I allowed to say that? Not that you've introduced our lovely guest, but if I get something wrong, I'm sure he'll call me out on it. But I've watched a ton of these running backs, a ton. And this is my time to geek out as well. So this is always my favorite pod of the year, basically, when we get Chucks on, because running back, everyone knows me, running game is my thing, not Shane's thing. So Shane can ask the questions today and then we can geek out. That sounds about right.
Yeah, I'm just going to try to sneak in pass game topics at some point and be like, but did you see that throw Jalen Hurts made in week 12? But we are joined by a great follow on Twitter. If you're not following Chucks, give him a follow at Chucks Maranan, CHUX. Maranan has lots of great stuff, really focuses on running backs. We were chatting about Ashton Genty the other day. Was it this morning? I don't know. The days all run together a little bit on Facebook. But Chucks, how are you doing this morning?
I'm doing awesome. It's great to be on with you guys yet again and talk. You guys letting me talk running back is like, I feel bad because it's like, why would you let me nerd out about my favorite position? But I love talking with you guys. So yeah, it's a pleasure as always to be with you guys.
All right. Well, let's dive into it. We want to talk to you about the Eagles running back room, a little bit about running backs around the league. We did a whole evolution of the run game in the NFL podcast last offseason. And there's a lot of great stuff in there that you guys can scroll back in the feed and go find. We didn't necessarily want to.
Can I just interrupt straight away already? Can I just say I thought about this the other day because I just completely ruining the podcast already. But I think what Chuck does is really cool because there's so many film guys online, but it's nice to have a niche. Like for some of us, I almost can't have a niche because I have to write about everything. But I know, Chuck, you watch everything, but I know running back is like your thing. But I think I read the other day, and I believe, and I'm now frantically Googling it because people are going to comment and say I'm wrong, that I think something like 6 running backs had 300 carries last year or something. It was basically extremely high. I just think it was interesting that last year we basically called this, didn't we? The whole running back show we did with you, Chucks. I actually went back and listened to the start of it when I knew you were coming back on. And we basically spoke about this potentially being the way the NFL was going. Mm-hmm. And I think it's probably the best time for your brand right now to talk about running backs because the NFL is transitioning back to that kind of way. And I'm just sort of giving us a nice little shout out us for last year. I think we basically called it, and I think no more than ever before, even the last probably 10 years or something. Mm-hmm. We've seen running backs come back into the fray. So I'm now trying to Google my stats, check I got it right, and I can't find it. But I'm pretty sure 6 backs had more than 300, maybe carries or touches. I think it was carries I saw the statistic. And that hadn't happened for years and years before. So sorry, Shane, I just wanted to point out that we did actually mention we got it right, I'd say, last year when we spoke about the running back position as well. There you go.
He likes to say on the show, shout out me.
I am right. It was 6 running backs. In 2003, 13 running backs carried the ball 300 times or more. But the last time it was anywhere near 6 was 2010. And in 2023, it was 0. So it was a difference. It was Barkley, Henry, Jacobs, Bijan, Jonathan Taylor, and Kyron Williams last year. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a change. The last time it happened was guys like Cedric Benson, Steven Jackson, Chris Johnson. So the league has changed a hell of a lot. And I think next year it could be just as many, if not more. So yeah, we'll get into that today, but I thought that was worth mentioning straight off the bat.
Yeah, I think it was also on that same show that I burst your bubble about the website rbsdm.com, standing for running backs don't matter back in the day.
Yeah, Jonny, it was a PFF thing, wasn't it, back in the day as well? PFF went heavily down the running backs don't matter.
Yeah.
Thank goodness that whole thing's over.
Don't search that phrase in my Twitter. I'm sure it's out there somewhere. But speaking of running backs that definitely matter, as we've got a comment already coming in from Yakko Warner on YouTube, says it's not like they can win Offensive Player of the Year or anything like that. Chucks, what are your expectations for Saquon Barkley in 2025? I don't think anybody really expected what he did in 2024 to happen. I think people thought he was going to be good and perhaps really good, but a 2,000-yard season and some of the highlights that he put on film. What are your expectations for him for the Eagles in 2025?
Yeah, when it comes to Saquon, I mean, well, first let me say that, we did call it last year, and it's something where, I've been saying for years that the NFL is cyclical. So it just goes round and round, you know what I mean, when it comes to pass game, run game, and everything like that, and maybe it'll probably never get to the how run centric it was in the 90s and early 2000s. It'll probably never get to that, but there are still things that take their time to come back around when it comes to an NFL game. And lo and behold, when you have markets for the running back in free agency that are so drastically swinging one way, and then you have, I think, between in the 2010s era, for a good several years, maybe 10 years, the amount of high end or elite running backs started to kind of dip. You saw the value or the quality of top end running backs start to take a little bit of hit. So all of those kind of contributed to that dip, but then you're seeing the uptick in talent with running backs, not only in the draft, but development and finding a niche role. And then we'll get to in a little bit, but we'll talk about the trends of defensive schemes and how offenses now counter. It's a good trend to really monitor because the running game is coming back. And Jonny, to your point, what you said, it kind of sucked for me when I started getting into the whole social media thing and scouting, 2017. no one cared about running backs. So like I was talking about running backs kind of like by myself in a corner. But now that the uptick is the interest is starting to kind of rise a little bit, it's nice to be able to stick with that niche that I have and just be like, hey, this is what I do. If you're interested, I'm here for you. But I appreciate all that. But yeah, like in terms of like Saquon for 2025, it's when you have what I've called the greatest single season for a running back in NFL history, especially when you include storyline and just context to everything that led up to it, it's hard, obviously, to replicate that. Very, very hard to replicate that. I know Terrell Davis for his season, he had back-to-back like insane seasons, so he can do it. I think that Saquon, for me, he is a type of like, even though the numbers maybe will they take a slight dip, maybe he won't reach that 2,000 yard mark, but I think you're still going to get high end like numbers and production out of him. And I'm sure we'll get into it. Like depending on what the Eagles do in the draft, maybe they take a little bit of workload off of him, which leads to a little bit of the dip in the yard totals. But in terms of like impact, I don't expect any of that to go away. I think he's going to still show that he is the best running back in the league and continue to put up elite / generational type of production from that position for the Eagles.
All right. So you mentioned the workload and Jonny talked about that a little bit up front, but Saquon Barkley had 378 touches last season. And so do you have concerns about regression due to that workload as you head into 2025? Like, is that a big concern for you? Would it shock you if we're getting to the end of the year and Saquon is like, 1,000 yards because he missed 6 games or, would it surprise you if there is that regression, and how big of a concern should that be?
I think, would it surprise me? I don't think you can be surprised because with running backs, especially nowadays, like when they have a huge season, historically, the next season, it's going to be a drop off. But for me, Saquon is the type of running back where he is the exception. I fell victim to this. I thought that at some point, Derrick Henry was going to take a dip, going to hit the wall. He hasn't hit a wall yet. He's still chugging along. And I think and even Saquon said this when he was a guest on the Pivot podcast, he talked about how he feels like he can produce at a high level well into his 30s. Like he is an exception. So until he proves otherwise or it's proven otherwise, I'm not going to have glaring concerns about workload with him. I'm going to. Do you want to kind of have insurance policies behind him just in case? Yeah. Like, is it possible he misses like 2 games ish? Next season. Yeah. I mean, it's the running back position. You're going to have injuries and you're going to get banged up here and there. But I don't have any glaring or really serious concerns about workload. It's monitor it, but he is who he is, and if you think that he is as the generational talent that we believe he is, he should get the benefit of the doubt of being the exception as opposed to being the trend, the rule.
All right, Jonny, what are your thoughts on regression due to that workload, and how concerned do you think people should be about that going into 25?
Not very concerned. I feel like regression is like natural. The odds that Saquon Barkley does what he does next year, like the same, is basically like nonsensical. And I love Saquon. I love the Eagles offensive line, but the idea he's going to have like 350 carries for 2,000 yards, average nearly 6 yards a carry. Chuck's made a really good point about NFL being cyclical. There's no way that NFL defenses coordinators are not planning to stop the running game next year. Like you're going to see bigger defensive linemen drafted earlier. You're going to see run game. Or should I say stopping the run, defensive linemen drafted higher. You're going to see teams prioritize stopping the run all off season. Like it's going to be a really big thing across the league. I think for Saquon, the thing that I would look at is untapped potential as a receiver. So I think you could maybe see his rushing numbers come down, but as a value piece, I think he could actually become just as valuable. Like we've seen him have upwards of like 90 catches in his rookie year or whatever with the Giants. Like he's used to average around the 40 and 50 mark. And we know Hurts doesn't throw to running back too much, but I think there's something he can do there. I think regression statistically will happen. So I think so much of football now, we speak about fantasy. I think fantasy-wise, regression is going to happen. If I'm wrong, then brilliant. If Saquon hits 2,000 yards again, then fantastic. But the odds are that those things are normally like rarities in the NFL. Just because it doesn't happen statistically, though, doesn't mean I think he'll be any less valuable. There was zero signs of him slowing down. I'm normally, selfishly, and I've said this for a while, I'm not a big running back by committee guy because I like giving a running back a workload. I think running backs get used to it. I think some running backs thrive just naturally getting their body used to playing. And anyone that's ever played high-level sports knows sometimes you just get in a rhythm. You don't want to go off. You want to keep playing. And I think Saquon isn't someone that you want to sort of manage. I think if you think he's fit, then he's ready to go. But what I would say is that quite often you see running backs slow down. Anyone that's played fantasy, and I play a lot of fantasy, Dynasty in particular, which often lends itself to being a very hard league and Dynasty to find running backs. You see these running backs come out and they're flying for like 6-7 weeks, and then they just naturally tail off. It almost just like, it feels like it happens every year to so many guys. I mean, I watched every snap change. I know you did as well, Saquon, and Chuck, you probably did as well. And I didn't see any game when I was like, oh, this is a slightly weaker Saquon Barkley game. Like, he looks tired this game. In the fourth quarter, he looks like he's slowing down. It just didn't look like that. He's obviously a genetic monster, and he's a freak of an athlete. And he seemed to get stronger and stronger as the year goes on. So, as I said, statistically, I doubt he does it again because it's basically impossible. But I think value-wise to this Eagles offense, I think he'll be just as valuable next year. He'll probably miss a couple more games because that's life. You're in the NFL, you get injured if you're carrying the ball a lot. It's just the way it is. But I didn't see any signs of him slowing down at all. And the final point is, when I watched the Giants, I watched a lot of Saquon before we signed him. I did see games where he slowed down. There is some, I love Saquon as much as anyone, but there is some Giants film out there, if you go and watch it, where he doesn't look the best. There is some games when I'm watching him for the Giants, I'm like, he's not the same player he was when he was younger. So I was a little worried that he might have slowed down, but he clearly has not, because last year he looked as good as ever. So I see no reason why he shouldn't be just as physically good this year, in all honesty.
It turns out that he didn't lose a step. The Giants just broke his will to be a football player, which is understandable if you've watched many Giants games. But I mean, you're over here talking about him being like just a genetic freak. And I'm like, yeah, I like threw my back out sneezing a couple days ago. So just, that's why I sit behind a microphone and instead of playing football. But I wanted to throw a graphic up on the screen that I think this came from PFF. This is something I looked up a long time ago and saved. Because I had posted it in our Patreon Discord because people were talking about this, right after the Super Bowl. And it's a little bit of a dated study, but because it only runs through 2020, but it's showing basically how many rushes a player had and then what his difference in rushing yards over expectation was the next season. And surprisingly, it actually shows that there's a trend up for players that had over 300 rushes in a season. They tend to perform better in rushing yards over expectation the next year. And I mean, I think that probably testifies to the fact that there's just not a lot of guys that get over 300 carries, and the ones that do are usually kind of freaks. And then it also went off of, my screen share disappeared, but there was also it also tracked, here you go, get it back. It also tracked basically that running backs do steadily decline after about 1,500 rushes, which Saquon has just topped that number this year. So, there's outliers in every model and things, but I do think that a lot of times that typically gets overstated. But I guess we'll see how it plays out next season. So
I do want to say that's an interesting graphic. I would like to, if you can pull it up, maybe, obviously not now, but like if you can find it, I would like to compare that graph to rushing yard totals, because obviously we know that rushing yards over expectations is different from rushing yard totals. I feel like rushing yard totals do take a dip. I could be wrong. I'm just going off of memory. I feel like rushing yard totals take a dip, and that's why, especially in the fantasy community, people they stay away from running backs who had monster years the year before. But when you're looking at rushing yards over expectation, that takes a look at how they're running independently of certain factors. So like that'd be very interesting to see. I would love to compare those two two graphics like that to kind of see, like, hey, yard totals might dip, but what they're doing, in terms of what they're working with, is still on a good peak.
Yeah, you look at a game like the Super Bowl where rushing totals like just plummeted because the team was stacking the box, and so every yard was hard, and it opens you up in other ways. And so I'm interested to see how that plays out, specifically for the Eagles in 2025. But maybe that's a project we can dig into after the show. But speaking of the Eagles running back room, you mentioned an insurance policy. You would like to have that. So the Eagles have, right now in the running back room, obviously they have Saquon. They lose Kenny Gainwell to Pittsburgh, but they bring in A.J. Dillon. They drafted Will Shipley last year. So how do you feel about the running back room in general headed into the NFL draft?
I feel solid about it. I mean, I don't love it, but I don't think it's a bad room. With Will Shipley, we took him last year, and Jonny knows I'm still a little bitter that we took Shipley.
I know what you're going to say.
Over guys like Tyrone Tracy and Ray Davis, who I wanted on the Eagles. So, I'm still a little bitter about that. But the few carries and touches that Shipley did get, I was impressed. I thought he did well. And I'm like, if you roll into 2025 with him as RB2, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with him. I know we signed A.J. Dillon. Jonny, I know I saw the clips you did. You posted all 22 clips shortly after we signed him. I know you're probably a little bit higher on him than I am. I've never been a huge A.J. Dillon fan. I don't think his vision is that great, and I feel like he doesn't do much from an athletic standpoint. He's just a simply power runner, but he doesn't do much outside of that. I might not be giving enough credit to him as a pass protector, which is completely fair. But in terms of what the talking points about Dillon have been ever since he was drafted, I've always just kind of been a little lower than most people say. And so I wasn't crazy about that signing, but I don't hate it. It gives someone and he's on a cheap contract. So if he makes it past training camp and is works with Shipley as part of the backups to Saquon, sure, that's awesome. If he doesn't make it, if he gets cut after training camp, sure. So I'm okay with it, but with this running back class coming in, would not be surprised at all because of how deep it is that they bring in someone else. So.
Yeah, a comment coming in here from GGN that I feel like Dillon always looked good when I watched him live. And you've also got the injury thing, didn't play last year, to factor in. I guess we could say he has a very low workload in 2024, so maybe that averages out just a bit. But Jonny, what about you? What are your thoughts on the Eagles running back room as a whole as we approach the draft in a couple weeks?
Yeah, I want more. I'm probably a little bit harsher than Chuck's. I don't know. People know my thoughts on Shipley. I think he's just a guy. I think he's fine. I think what he does as a receiver is probably better. I think when your strength is running the football, I'm sort of a big proponent of building on strength. So rather than looking at your weaknesses all the time, try to build on a strength. And I think Kenny Gainwell was a much better player than people gave him credit for. And outside of Shipley and Dillon, the Eagles don't really have anything. And if Saquon was to go down, that's pretty narrow. I'm not a running backs don't matter guy, clearly, but I am a huge proponent of drafting one basically all the time, because running backs must be, I don't know what the studies say, but you must have as good of a chance of hitting on a late round running back as you do in any other position. You can find these guys all over day 3 that have real talent. Last year was no exception. I was Tyrone Tracy's biggest fan, and I nailed that one. I'm gutted that it wasn't with the Eagles because he'd fit perfectly.
Yeah.
But there are so many young, strong backs in this year's draft class. It would be insane to me to not add to it because you signed A.J. Dillon or because you happened to draft Shipley last year. Shipley didn't do anything wrong last year to say he was a 4th round pick. If someone stares you in the face this year in the 4th or 5th round and you have the chance to go out and improve the room, I would be very disappointed, I'll be honest, if going into 2025 this season, that is the running back room. I think they are 1 or 2 short, possibly 2 short. If Dillon doesn't make it, you could have Shipley and one other. But I think, as we've already mentioned about Barkley going, you don't want to be in a situation where when Barkley goes down, you don't have much to back him up. And that's why I like Dillon, just because he can handle a workload. And I've not seen that Shipley can do that yet. So yeah. I think they'll add something more. And probably the fun part of the conversation today, we'll get in when we look at who those guys could be. Yeah. Especially as I've done no draft takes at all this year, except on the podcast. But yeah, I think there will be more to do for the running game.
To your point, Johnny, like you like it's it's fantastic points, because you're talking about how, like, if Saquon were to go down, who do you trust, right? You trust Dylan. For us, I don't trust Dylan as much, because he could take a workload, but what are the types of runs that you need, right? So like I say this, I was about to say this on Twitter actually the other day, is I think, because I've seen people on social media say, oh, this guy, player X, would be a perfect complement to Saquon, and then this guy, player Y, would be a perfect complement to Saquon, and people think that you need like a scat back or a pass catching back, or other people think, hey, like you need a power back, right? I think that's overstated. I think that when you talk about a complement, right, to a running back, you're talking about someone who does things well that the other one doesn't do well. With Saquon, we know he does everything well. He's the foundation of our offense, right? So what do you need? You need a backup who can come in and be relied upon if Saquon is not there. So it's not necessarily, I don't prefer one style or the other. To me, similar to what your point was, Johnny, like I need someone who I can trust to come in and still be a good runner and be reliable on passing downs to an extent, and still provide somewhat of, he doesn't have to be explosive like to the degree that Saquon is, but you have to be able to have a sense of, okay, like I can give them the ball and they can make plays for me behind that backfield, in the backfield. So that to me is what you need. You don't need a complement to Saquon. I think there is no such thing as a complement to Saquon. I think you need a backup to him who can come in and do this similar role to what he is if he's not there. So 100% agree with what you're alluding to.
I think that's the most interesting discussion about, like, sort of philosophically, I go back and forth about what do you do when you've got a superstar running back? So when you've got a Jonathan Taylor, a Derrick Henry, a Saquon Barkley, how do you build out the rest of your room? I think maybe I see it differently to you, which is interesting, but that's the beauty of this sport, is that I am interested in like a complementary back more so, but I guess I'm sort of also, I want the best of both worlds. I want a running back that can play the same role as him, and I also want an additional complementary piece, because I think last year, for whatever reason, Saquon wasn't trusted on third down massively. I think that could be just to give him a rest occasionally when it wasn't an obvious running situation. But it's so hard to find a backup like that, because the drop-off's going to be huge, and you can't go and spend a second-round pick on a really talented guy and say, yeah, when Saquon gets injured, you can have 2 games where you're awesome. It's really hard. Yeah. So when you've got I love Greg Cosell's term. It's a term that I always use in my scouting community, which is basically, are you a foundational back or are you a feature back? So very simply, feature is like your maybe 60% touch guys. Like think of like Aaron Jones, AJ Dillon. You might call Aaron Jones the feature back, whereas a foundational back is like your Saquon Barkley, Ezekiel Elliott in his prime, your Derrick Henry. You are the foundation of that team's offense. And when you build your offense around a foundational back, the truth is you are not going to have a foundational back backing him up. Yeah. And that makes building an offense around a running back, it can be a really scary proposition, because if you lose that running back, unless you've got a backup plan, you can be screwed. Like if you want to go old school and have a rookie quarterback and have a very strong defense, the old running the ball and strong defense type, and you've got a superstar back and that back goes down, you're not going to have anyone to replace him the same way. So Gainwell was actually much better than people realized, in that Gainwell could run zone stuff. Gainwell could run gap scheme stuff. Gainwell could handle himself in pass pro just about, and receiving. He was like good enough in every area to be able to hang if Saquon went down, whereas the Eagles don't have that guy this year. And in a weird way, AJ Dillon can be that guy. He's just a bit of like a 5 out of 10 at everything, but he can sort of do a lot of the roles. But I think, like, philosophically, I like getting into big picture stuff in the offseason. That's a really interesting thought to think about. When you have a top running back, and the Eagles have one, and make no mistake, the Eagles offense is built around Saquon. I know Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown are also, it doesn't matter. The team is built around the running game. Everything they do in the passing game works off the run, or it should do to an extent. They want to be a run-first offense. And the way, if you were to go and ask defensive coordinators in the room what they are going to do, I mean, look at the Super Bowl. What was the priority of one of the great defensive minds, arguably the best defensive mind in the league? What was Spag's priority? It was shut down Saquon. That was the priority. The priority was not shut down AJ Brown. It was not stop the passing game. He basically dared the passing game to beat him. And as we all know, it did. So I think that is a really interesting thing to think about. What do you do? And Shane, I'm interested in your thoughts on that as well. I know you've been asking the questions, but just big picture, like when you've got a foundational back, because we're going to get into some draft names here in a second. How do you handle like backing up that position? Is it even possible? Because you can't go into a season where there is an argument, by the way, you just say you change the whole offense. If Barkley goes down, you just go, right, we're going to be more pass heavy then. We're not even going to bother having a 20 carry a game running back. And that's also really tricky to plan for as well.
Yeah, I think that's what you have to do because, it's not dissimilar if you look at a team like if Josh Allen or Joe Burrow or Patrick Mahomes goes down for their team, they're the foundation of that offense. What do? Well, they're just out of luck. Like they're probably going to swing to being a more run heavy team because their quarterback went down. And I think you would see the inverse thing happen with the Eagles. If Saquon Barkley goes down, like if the foundational piece of your offense goes down, you're naturally going to shift in the other direction because, as much as the Eagles have valued backup quarterback, even Jalen Hurts goes down, game plan changes, right? And so I think it's the same thing for any team. Whatever your foundational piece is going to be, you ideally want to have a backup that can come in and shoulder like 70% of that load, and the other 30% is going to get swung in the other direction. So I think that in an ideal world, you have a guy that you trust to do a lot of the things Saquon does in a less freakish way. And you're also going to end up becoming a more pass heavy team. Or in the Eagles case, you can also get your quarterback involved a lot more in the run game for a period of time if needed, if Saquon went down. So I think that's probably the answer. Maybe we just become a running back factory. Maybe the QB factory thing's dead. We're a running back factory now, and we just need to keep drafting those guys. And we are going to get into some of the draft things. But I think that's how I would approach it. Just knowing like, if Barkley goes down, your offense will change. You can't have a backup to Barkley that is Barkley. And so I think the most natural progression is, hey, we're also paying a quarterback $50 million a year, and we've got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and Dallas Goedert for the next couple weeks or something. I don't know how much longer we can say that, but if you had to, you could become a little more pass heavy for a few games. So that's kind of my thought, at least. Let's keep rolling here before we get into some draft stuff. Chuck's Saquon Barkley, Derrick Henry. They both signed with their respective teams in free agency last season, and then they finished first and second in the league in rushing yards. 2,005 yards for Saquon, 1,921 for Derrick Henry. It would have been hilarious. I was pulling for them both to hit 2,000 because I thought it would have been awesome. But by far, lapping the rest of the league. And these are guys that were available in free agency. And we don't often, we never see like the star quarterback hit free agency. It just doesn't happen. It happened with two running backs, and they just lapped the league in their rushing yards in 2024. So do you think this is going to be the start of an upswing in running back value league-wide? I mean, I know you talked about the league being cyclical in nature, and I think there's a lot of truth to that. I also think that these are just like two elite superstar running backs you should pay. I think one of the funniest things that could happen, one of the funniest outcomes, is if teams are like, hey, the Eagles won a Super Bowl by investing in the run game, and then they just start overpaying like run-of-the-mill backs. But how do you see that market playing out over the next few years in terms of running back value?
I think if you tackle, let's tackle first free agency. So like I think we've seen, and it showed that with this free agent class of running backs, it didn't have a marquee name, and no one got paid like that. So absolutely, like a big contribution was the fact that Saquon, Derrick Henry, also you can include Josh Jacobs, who did very well for the Packers. Marquee names, high-end talent, running back talents that were somehow available, and the market was just not – the running back market was so one way that those teams capitalized on it. So I think that – I don't think in terms of free agency, I don't think we're going to see run-of-the-mill jag running backs overall throughout the league get paid a lot of money. I think, though, if higher-end guys – and you can start peaking toward, I think, next year or the next 2 years, like – that one draft class with Kenneth Walker and and Breece Hall, if those two running backs hit the market, you're talking about high-end talented guys who could be difference makers for their team. So if they're free agents, that you're talking about, again, similar kind of thing to what we saw last year. So that's for free agency. I think it's just a matter of the value will be there for higher end talents, but not for your run of the mill guys. I think that when it comes to the draft, it'll be very interesting because I think what you said, like depending on classes and everything, I think you're going to see that when it comes to those higher end talents, teams are going to be more willing to spend premium picks on them. I'm not saying top 10 unless it's someone like Ashton Genty. I'm saying that, like, okay, late first, second round, are there guys that are bona fide, like, hey, they can be our foundation or like a lead / featured guy. Should we take them there? And there are going to be more teams that are willing to, wanting to. The whole reason why behind it, because I remember toward the end of last season, there were several. I could have sworn there were like at least 3 writers in media, national media, that came out with articles talking about the renaissance of the running game and the running back position. One of them is one of my favorite followers, is Ted Wynn from Athletic, and I reread his article again, and all the points he's making, like in terms of the lower quality of linebacker play, the uptick in too high defenses, and the fact that there's for defenses there's less of an emphasis on stopping the run, so offenses are now countering that. So the overall volume of rush attempts is not seeing an uptick, but the efficiency for when those offenses start to run the ball, the efficiency that's what's seeing an uptick. So you're getting the difference makers like the guys we named, Saquon, Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs. When they are in there, their elite ability is able to take advantage of those defenses that run too high, with lighter boxes, or the bad linebacker play, who they may be faster but they're lighter, right? So it's not a matter of volume in terms of rushing. It's a matter of, can you present explosives through the run game? That's what the Eagles did better than any other team, is they were able to crush defenses with explosive plays. And the best offenses are ones that can counter defenses with great rushing attacks when they need to call upon that rushing attack. So I do think we're going to see an upswing in running back value, but it's going to be focused on the higher end talents more than the middle of the road guys, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think that makes perfect sense. So speaking of some of those elite guys, I want you to give me your top 5 running backs in the NFL right now on a 1-year timeline. So we're not factoring in age, just you're picking a running back to be your lead back for the 2025 season. Who are your top 5 guys?
Well, we're obviously going to go Saquon at 1. That's the clear and obvious one. I think number 2 might surprise some people. And some other people will be like, how are you going to hate on the King? It's not that I'm hating on King Henry. It's more so I think this guy is who is next. And number 2, I'll go Bijan Robinson. Bijan Robinson to me is the next coming, as close to Saquon as we're going to see, in my opinion. I think Bijan Robinson it's so funny. He was stuck in that Atlanta offense, just running outside zone. So like almost any other running back, you'd be like, oh, it's going to suck because they're limited on what they're doing schematically wise, right? But Bijan, he was like, okay, we're going to run outside zone only. I am going to be a master at it. And he killed it. Like him running outside zone, which him as a prospect, I didn't think outside zone was his like forte, but he made it his forte. He killed it. The way he runs is just so smooth. It's so, his mind and his body are so in tune with each other. And obviously he has superior athletic traits. So I would go Bijan at 2. And then Derrick Henry at 3. 4, it would be Jahmyr Gibbs, who's so explosive, like probably the most pure explosive running back in the league. So Gibbs at 4. 5 is going to surprise people, but I'm going to stand by my guy and be with him and still believe in him. I'm at 5. I would go still with Kenneth Walker. I love Kenneth Walker. So
Wow.
I think Kenneth Walker is an elite talent that is stuck behind a really bad offensive line. And I have been standing for him since he came out in the draft. And I still believe that if you give him at least an adequate or a solid, average offensive line, he is going to make magic. He just has to stay healthy. He has to stay healthy. So there are a bunch of guys I think at 5 you could go with. And Josh Jacobs, I hate having to exclude him. There are so many running backs that are so talented. Who was the Bucky Irving is so good. So like a lot of guys at 5 you can go with. But in terms of like, I think that there are so many guys in that tier who could compete for 5. So I'm gonna stand by my guy Kenneth Walker.
All right, Johnny, give me your rundown. Who's your 1 through 5?
I'll do it very quickly because I was not going to have time to get into the draft stuff. So I would go Saquon 1. I weirdly wouldn't put Derrick Henry top 5. So if you thought you were disrespecting the king, I might be even more. I don't know. It's like I'd probably put him 5th. I have a knack for like explosive backs that can contribute to the pass game more. So I would go Saquon. I would go Gibbs number 2 because I think Gibbs looks like he shot out of a cannon every single time I watched a guy run. And I prioritize explosive plays. And then I'd probably go Bijan. Then I'd annoy everyone and go Christian McCaffrey. I know he's been hurt. I know he's been banged up. But I think if McCaffrey is anywhere near healthy, I think he's probably the best running back I've seen in the past 5 to 7 years, except for Saquon. And then I guess I'd have to go Derrick Henry if I was going to put him 5th. The 5th would be like a combination of like, I don't know, take your pick of Henry, JT, Jacobs, probably one of those 3. I know you loved Kenneth Walker coming out. So I'll leave Kenneth Walker to you. But yeah, I think Gibbs is the one that I just absolutely adore watching. And I'm quite glad the Eagles didn't play the Lions last year just because Gibbs is the kind of guy that would scare me because I think he's just so explosive. So there you go.
Yeah, if you could turn injuries off, Christian McCaffrey would be right behind Saquon for me. But it's just so hit or miss on what you're going to get from him now. Like age aside, just like I don't know if he's going to be healthy. So Bucky Irving was one of my guys coming out. I loved
Bucky Irving was a great example of tape over testing. Tested horrendously. Tape is unbelievable.
And I learned that lesson because I loved Kyron Williams until he tested so poorly at the combine, and I dropped him pretty significantly. And he obviously blew up, and I was like, never again. So I resisted that with Bucky Irving. But those guys are guys that I really like as well. So in your list there, transitioning to the draft, Ashton Genty coming out. Blue chip prospect, going to go really highly, I think. How high on your list would Ashton Genty be ranked for you as running backs you would want for 1 year in 2025?
I'm going to be like maybe more bullish than I should be, but I'd probably put him right at 3 after Bijan. There's only 3 guys I've ever given like the top grade for me. The way I do it, I just do early first round grades. And so that's the highest grade I can give you as a prospect. And I've only given it to 3 guys ever. It's Saquon, Bijan, and now Genty. And I think that he's different too from Saquon and Bijan. Like in terms of build and play style, he's different. I mean, they all have elite traits, but his play style is different, and it's so much fun to watch. So again, maybe I'm getting ahead of myself because he hasn't played anything, and putting him ahead of a guy like Henry, people might scoff at me. And it's funny, John, you said you're lower on Henry. It's funny because I got in trouble years ago because I had tweeted out, and I kind of like regret it a little bit, but I tweeted out like Henry's supposed to be an elite talent, but yet he comes off the field in passing downs. I don't get that. So like, I totally get what you're saying with the Henry stuff, but like, I think it's come to a point for me where like I have to kind of respect what he's doing. So I have to rank him like respectively, but I totally get what you're saying. I still would put Genty ahead of him at 3 if I were to if I had to include Genty in that ranking.
All right, Johnny, what about you? How high up would you have Genty in your ranking?
Not before Bijan and Gibbs, but probably before CMC. So probably 4th as well. He's like contact balance is like someone I don't think I've ever seen before in terms of just the way he stays upright is absurd.
It's insane.
And he will go top 7, top 8. I bet there'll be a team that will build their offense around him. He'll be the generic foundation back that I said earlier on. He is going to be a superstar at the next level, almost like guaranteed. So he'll probably bust now, but the talent is just off the charts. So there you go.
It would like be the objectively most hilarious pick for the Giants if they let Saquon walk.
Yeah.
He gets a 2,000-yard season with the Eagles, and they're like, you know what? Let's draft Ashton Genty.
Yeah.
That would be hilarious. It's not going to happen, but it'd be funny. So last question. Who are a few of your favorite running back fits for the Eagles? And how early would you consider drafting them?
All right. So, I mean, I will throw in some lower names on my list before I get to my number one guy. So, I mean, like later in the draft, I mean, you're talking about, I'll mention Jordan James, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, who I think is really, really good as a processor, and his vision's really good. Brashard Smith is enticing, former wide receiver. Mario Anderson, very stout, very compact build, a sleeper. So guys like that, I would, rounds 5 and on, 100%. Like, well, Jordan James might go a little earlier. So Jordan James, I think I'd be okay with round 4. But my top 2 guys, I'll mention my second guy, Taj Brooks. I probably will have a lot higher than most. I think his vision is among the tops in the class and is one of the tops in terms of creativity. And I think that he has an all-around game. So Taj Brooks, I am very high on. And I think he's someone who my grade is going to be higher than where he gets picked. So I could see a scenario where he's there in round 5 and I would take him. But my number one guy, the guy that I've been pounding the table for ever since, for months now, and my number one underrated back, number one sleeper in this class, and I don't care if I'm the only one that has a day 2 grade on him, I will still stand by it. I would love for the Eagles to take Kyle Monangai from Rutgers. I think Kyle Monangai is so slept on and underrated in this class. And you're talking about someone who may not have that explosiveness. That's the main thing he lacks. But he is still such a creative runner. And I'm actually going to post my scouting report and some clips tomorrow of him, and I'm trying to make my case for him. But he's such a creative and quick and smart runner. And I think if you put him in this offense, in this run scheme, he is going to excel. I think he is someone who I have a 3rd round grade on him. He will be there in round 5. I'm confident he'll be around 5. If you take him and you need to rely on him to run the ball, a good amount of times if Saquon's not there, I have confidence in a guy like Kyle Monangai to be able to make a lot of plays for this offense. So he's my top guy I'd want the Eagles to target because I have a day 2 grade on him, but he's going to be there on day 3 for athletic testing and measurable reasons. He's not going to be drafted that early.
All right. Jonny, are those names on your radar? And same question to you. What's a couple of your favorite running back fits for the Eagles?
Good, actually, because I haven't watched them. So there's so many backs in this draft class, man.
There's so many.
Absurd. Like, I haven't even watched. I think your running back 3 is Martinez, isn't it? Yeah. I didn't even get to him. Is it Jordan James, the Oregon guy, or James Jordan, whatever his name is? There's I genuinely haven't watched them. I watched 15, and I feel like 15 is a pretty decent amount to watch for a draft class, and I'm still like 5 short. I didn't watch Blue, the guy the Eagles had the draft visit with. I haven't watched Martinez. I haven't watched whatever. Is it Jordan James or James Jordan? Is it Oregon guy?
Jordan James.
Yes, I've not watched any of them. So I think I could watch 18. So my absolute draft crush, which will never happen, Shane, but I would love Travion Henderson just to go like pure explosive vibes. He would never, the Eagles would never do it. He'd go 2nd round, but just pass protection, the best I've ever seen, possibly. And explosive. So you're like, Saquon's coming out, in comes Henderson. Again, you've got a complete home run hitter, and take off Saquon on 3rd down and put Henderson in, and you're laughing because pass protection, receiving skills are incredible. Couple of random names that I looked at. I really like Baishal Tutin. I'm going to pronounce every draft name wrong, by the way, Shane. You know this by now. Just basically the breakaway speed, like legit track star, fluid as hell, loads of problems he's got to work on, like fumbles and pass protection, but just from a pure like athlete, deep speed that the Eagles could want. I really like him. And then I've got a couple of receiving backs. So if you want to go the other way, if you're not like a Will Shipley guy, which I'm still mixed on, and you want like your generic 3rd down back, should we say, Devin Neal from Kansas is one I really like. One of the best receiving backs I've seen, and really sharp in pass protection as well. And the other guy I really liked, if I give you a really, really, really small school guy who may suck because his level of competition is incredibly low, but Marcus Yarns, if you haven't seen him, just go and have a look at him. Like, he really, really good as a receiver, but also like tempo as a runner, the way he can make defenders miss, like stop-start quickness, really good. He won't go high at all. He'll be late day 3. So if the Eagles want to add someone else who can sort of, you want to say, do a little bit of it all, rather than complement Saquon, I like Marcus Yarns quite a lot. But there are so many backs that are going to go towards the end of day 3 that have explosive traits in this draft class. It would sort of be absurd for the Eagles not to come away with one in day 3. Like DJ Giddens from Kansas State is another one who's just like movement skills, lateral movement, change of pace, really, really good. Like any kind of back you want in this class, you'll find it. Like it's a weird class, actually. There's almost so many that loads of them are going to go to horrible landing spots and end up as backups because there's simply not enough space around the NFL to give all these guys a chance. But if the Eagles want like your receiving back, go and get Devin Neal. If you want your explosive guy, like go and get Tootin. If you want your like sort of decent everything, go and get is it Jarquez Hunter from Auburn, who can do just like a little bit of everything as well. Like there are so many different types of back in the draft class. If you want your outside zone bruisers, you Caleb Johnson, if you're into that. Like there's just so many different types. Going back to the initial question, Shane, to sort of round things off. But if the Eagles didn't add one of these guys in the class, I'd be a little bit mad because it would feel like a complete waste. You know, like when there was that amazing receiver class a couple of years ago, and you're like, you just have to come away with one of them because you're like, there's just so much talent here. You've got to get someone. And I feel like that about this year's running back class. There's like 15 to 18 guys that I would have like draftable grades on within the top 5 rounds, which sounds absurd. So the Eagles should absolutely be looking to upgrade on both Shipley and Dillon in this draft class because there's a lot of talent out there this year.
Yeah, Jonny, it's funny you say like you've gone through 15. Like I had that notion too. So when I started, I had my list of guys and I was like, okay, there's like 31 guys listed here. Let me try to get through. And I got through 15-ish and I was like, I think that would be good. I don't expect any of the rest of the guys to be really like, middle round grades for me, right? I was so wrong. I was so wrong. And there's still like, I think 4 more guys I have to finish off. But like, even with the last guy that I watched which was Krosky Merritt, I was like, oh my gosh, like he's pretty solid. He's got good vision. So like they're 100% like in the middle of the rounds, it's so congested. Like I have 3 running backs who have early round grades. So it's Genty, it's Marion Hampton, and it's Damian Harris. After that, you're talking about like late second round grades for me, up until like 4th or to late 4th. There's so many guys. There's so many guys. So by rule of just like math, there's so many that are going to fall because, like you said, Jonny, there's not enough space. There's not enough roster spots, not enough teams for all these guys to get taken. They're going to fall. So, a lot of the guys you mentioned, I like too. So, I had to look at my list and I'd be like, yeah, all of these guys, if they fall to like the 5th round, just give me whoever is like best available. Yeah. There's so many that can contribute at a high level. Like, you said too, and then Giddens, I have highly ranked and talked about, Devin Neal, Dylan Sampson.
Like, another one.
So many guys. So like they have to come away with someone because there'll be someone there in round 5.
One final one as well, Shane, is if the Eagles wanted to go down the Tyron Tracy route, which they didn't do last year, and they wanted to add like a former receiver at running back, there's a few in this class. There's a few receivers actually that have that sort of like running back receiver hybrid. But the running back is it Brashard Smith? He's another one, former wide receiver, like not the most physical, quite undersized, but like outstanding as a receiving back. Like split him out wide, he can run like real routes, not just like catch balls in the flat and make a guy miss. Like he can run actual wide receiver routes. So like, as I said, there is, for those of you that haven't watched a lot of this class or anything and are wondering should the Eagles do something, I'd be stunned if they did not, like genuinely stunned, because whatever profile they want, they will find someone in day 3. And I'm not even talking like round 4. Like Shipley going last year in round 4 sounds sort of absurd because Shipley would be like one of so many this year. Like he would be, I don't even know, would he even be a top 15 back in this year's class? Like you'll get a better back in round 5 this year than you would have last year with Shipley coming out in round 4. I feel pretty certain about that.
It reminds me of a certain historic some would have called it, running back class in 2017 with Leonard Fournette, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, Joe Mixon, Alvin Kamara, Kareem Hunt, James Conner, Samaje Perine, Aaron Jones, and the Eagles walked away with Donnell Pumphrey. So let's not do that again.
Yeah.
The
But
worst.
that class, I will say, the 2017 class, I feel like it was more top heavy than this.
Yes, it's better. It's
Yeah.
better. At the top, it's better.
There were several guys you could make a case for that deserved round 1 or round 2 grades that could be like, there's your lead back, there's your guy. And there were several of them. But with
Which
this one,
suits the
I
Eagles.
don't see as much.
Suits the Eagles perfectly. This draft class could not be better for the Eagles at running back because they've got their superstar. They want their change of pace, backup, complementary, whatever you want to call it. It could not suit them more because actually the top is not great. I think that's why I was disappointed in the class. When I started watching it, I've heard so many good things about it.
Yeah,
And then I got to like Quid Junkins and Caleb Johnson as like my fourth and fifth guys. And I was like, well, it's not all that. But then I just kept watching guys. And I was like, well, I like him. Like I just sort of kept going on and on and on.
Yeah.
And I realized, like, even if someone like Scatterbo or Caleb Johnson, I'm not the biggest fans of, and others are.
Same. Oh my God! Thank
There's
God.
just
I feel like I'm the
Yeah.
only one that's not huge on Scatterbo, and it feels like everyone's like, "Oh, he's the best thing since sliced bread." And I'm like,
he's the
solid.
old production over traits. I literally wrote in my summary, I said, is he one of those amazing college players who just doesn't have the juice to be special in the NFL?
Mhm.
He looks like a fantastic college player who's not going to be a great NFL player, and he didn't run his 40 at the pro day or his combine. And when running backs don't run either, unless they're special, you sort of know why.
And it's
he's a
funny
little
because
slow.
on his RAS score, like he has, I don't know where they got the timings from, but like he scored elite in terms of burst and acceleration.
Yeah,
But when you turn on the film, I'm like, I don't
It's
see
not there.
that. I don't see that. Like, is it just track, like, like his pro day numbers, because that does not match to me. Totally does not match to me. So yeah,
I gave him a third round grade.
Yeah, you're higher than me. I gave him. I was like fourth, but again, considering you might get him like third and fourth, and you got Shipley last year in the fourth, like I'm not Scambo's biggest fan, but he's miles ahead of him as a prospect. In terms of like production and stuff, like it's not really close. Like the production is off the charts. So yeah, I think we will be having a show, Shane, after the draft, and we'll be talking about one of these guys in more detail. I'm almost certain.
Which is good because that's how I think you should approach running. Like running back is one of those things I've said for years. You should be drafting a day 3 running back at least every other year, if not every year.
Yeah.
And so it shakes out well for the Eagles to do that this year. So there you have it, guys. I don't know what to call this show. Talking about running back expectations, running back rankings, NFL draft fits, all things running back. Maybe that's what it should be called. All things running backs with Chucks. But Chucks, thanks for joining us on the show. Before you get out of here, tell the people where they can find you on Twitter, your work, all that stuff. Go ahead and plug your stuff, man.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And I am at Charles Maranan on Twitter and also Instagram. I'm with A2D Radio, so all my stuff on Facebook and Instagram are posted through there. But on Twitter, I post my stuff on my own handle. I've started already with my running back scouting reports and evals, which I did. I was really excited about this year because I made a whole new template and I streamlined how it's presented. So I really like how I did it this year. So go check them out. I drop one a day, so I'm four into it, and I'm gonna drop. I usually every year I do 10 of them. This year I might do 12 just because there's so many guys, but I usually do at least 10 profiles, and then at the end of that, I'll drop my overall rankings, which is going to be so comprehensive. It's going to be so many guys, but yeah, just check them out on my Twitter, and yeah, that's me.
All right. Well, be sure you guys are following Chucks. If you're not, great follow on Twitter. Lots of great running back content, lots of good Eagles stuff as well. So thanks for joining us, Chucks. If you guys are watching live right now, Jonny and I are about to go do a live stream for our Patreons and mailbag episode. So plugging that as well. You can come check that out, get a free 1-week trial, check out all of our backlog of content, come join our Discord. It's a lot of fun as well. But I guess with that, we better get out of here before Johnny's baby comes flying in there and messes up our afternoon plans. So that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you guys for joining in. Huge shout out to Chucks for coming on. Chucks, we'll definitely have to have you back after the draft to talk about whichever one of these guys the Eagles end up drafting. So we'll see you guys on the other side of the draft talking about, I don't know, Dylan Sampson, Cam Scatabo. They're going to grab one of the guys Chucks doesn't like, and we're going to make him talk about it anyways. So we'll catch you guys next time.